it's mostly like ornamental gardening, which is like non-vegetable. So trees, shrubs, flowers, stuff like that. Hey everybody, there's snacks over there. If the kids need something to snack on, go on ahead and get them taken care of. But yeah, I've been doing that, and then the pandemic hit, and I wanted to work from home, and so I was just constantly on the computer, just filling out applications, typing up stuff, and I kept looking over into this corner of notes that I had piled up of just all this of this, and it's literally post-it notes and papers of like all the collection of gardening notes and hair stuff. And I'm like, well, since I'm here on the computer typing applications every day, let me just type this up and just do something with it. Either I do something now or I just get rid of it. Literally, I was just gonna toss it. And so I typed it up, and one of my friends who's a cosmetologist, I let her read it. I was like, this is about hair. I know about gardening, but I want to make sure the hair stuff is kind of correct. So I sent it to her, and the response she gave me back was, you need to send this to the editor. And I'm like, okay. And then she called my friend, who I didn't know was really getting into editing, Latoya. And I'm not gonna point her out, but she here.
We're supposed to be doing another event talking about this in detail.
This is always gonna be. You always gonna
I'm
be
just
shouted
saying.
Out, so you be all right.
All right.
So look, we got on it, and that was what, the end of 2020.
January 2021.
Yep. And then sent it to Bri because I needed an illustrator that, and I guess we'll just go into the questions, but you're gonna ask me first. But the reason I picked Bri was because I kind of thought I knew I wanted the book illustrated. I didn't want it to be a manual because there's so many garden manuals. They're very technical. If you're not into gardening and you try to read them, they're just need a dictionary. And if you're not into gardening, you're just gonna fly past them. Hair care books, there's a lot of those out there, and most of them are written by people who are not cosmetologists. So I'm like, I'm not trying to tell somebody how to do their hair. I'm not a horticulturalist. I was having imposter syndrome. So I'm just like, well, if I make it about myself, I really can't have people criticize me about myself because I'm the only one that can do that, or a therapist. So I'm like, okay, I want it to be illustrated. I want it to be very visual. But I had like Pinterest boards. I was sending Bri stuff, but I just thought like I need it to be its own type of art. Like I didn't want somebody else's art to be my thoughts. Like I wanted it to come out of, I wanted it to be something new. So I was like, I have to give it to somebody who I know. And even though I've seen Bri's stuff that she posted online, there's stuff, because I know her personally, there's stuff I've seen her do that no one's really seen her do, and that's what led me to be like, she has to do it. So that's Bri, the illustrator. So yeah, unless anybody has a particular question they want to get out the way and ask us right now, you can. She's gonna ask me around the questions first, and then I'm gonna ask her questions. Wait, your niece has a question.
How do you make pizza?
That's your auntie to ask you. Bri's also a chef, so that's why she's probably asking that question. She knows her auntie. Oh, if anybody has to go to the restroom, it's just right out through inside the gallery too. So.
It's already.
Okay, ready? You can. Can you hear?
Can everybody hear me? Can you hear me?
Better.
Better.
Easier? Yeah.
There you go. Okay. My name is Bri. I am an artist, illustrator, and graphic designer. been a graphic designer for 4 years and a artist and illustrator for basically my entire life. Yeah. And I am extremely introverted, so Amy will probably have to wheel me back in from going off into another universe.
If she's just staring like this, then yeah.
Okay. So we'll get started, and I'll ask Amy about the book. The book is called Guard in My Hair, A Growing Mix. First question is, how did you get the idea for writing the book?
Kind of like I mentioned before, it was like just looking at my gardening journal and then seeing the similarities. And then the way I started it was because I like lists, I like order. So the book literally was like, I had my garden journal that looked like a diary, but the hair part was very like boom, 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 boom. And it was just very detailed to where it was a side-by-side comparison. And then that's when I kind of was like, I don't want that. So it just kept morphing. The interesting fact about the book, if you haven't read it, is every chapter is the title of a song. And when I'm writing a lot of stuff or gardening, I'm always listening to music. So in writing it, I'm like, okay, I can write about myself and my experiences, but I still need to make it personal. I have an artist, but I still need to make it personal. And I'm thinking about this, listening to music at the same time, and I'm like, it needs to have music in it. But I don't sing, I don't make music, I don't record music. So it was, okay, what part of this chapter reminds me of what song? Or I would just think of moments and I'm like, oh, I was listening to the song when I, did this thing. So that's why every chapter is like based off a song. So, and I don't know if you're gonna ask me this because I'm just thinking of it. Well, the song part, it actually morphed the book because the original manuscript was every chapter begun with lyrics of the song. But then I was nervous when I thought about publishing because I'm like, I don't want to be sued. So I can't just be using song lyrics because I went into research about that and realized that you have to pay for permission. You got to ask for permission. And I didn't know there was ways to get around that. So it literally changed how I wrote the book. It actually, me not using song lyrics forced me to get more personal with how I wrote the book. Because I needed you to be able to read it and then listen to the music and be like, okay, that's where she got that from. So, yeah.
You have a question for me?
Which one do I want to start with? Let's see. When I sent you the manuscript, like what were your initial thoughts? Like when you saw it, when you read it?
My initial thoughts were I can somewhat relate to the text that she sent me. And it was just in the beginning, she had told me probably years ago this idea. And ever since then, it's been in my brain until you came with me with the actual manuscript.
I heard about that.
I tried to keep my mind sort of open so that my technical like art style or illustration style doesn't overcrowd what Amy was trying to write in the book.
Yeah, I forgot. Yeah, I was trying to do some like art, get like a collection of artists and give me their interpretation of like art and hair. And this was like
It was a while ago.
Yeah, it was a while
We
ago.
went to Lords and Gardens.
We did.
Pictures.
So this, yeah, it's always kind of been in my head. Just didn't realize it was gonna come out like that. So
I know you touched on it before, but what, not only what is your writing process for this book, but What is your writing process in general?
I should say something that my editor would like me to say, but I'm not. Most people usually write something every day. I don't, and the reason I don't is because, like, some people will say, "Oh, I want to write a book. I want to write a book," and I've been hearing a lot of that lately. Like, if you are trying to sell whatever, you'll have people come up to you trying to do the same thing, and they'll ask you questions. I don't. For me, when I write, it's not always literal writing. Like, I'm writing in my head. I'm writing in my head all the time. And if I sit down and write, I won't stop. So I don't write every day because I literally do not have the time, because my whole day will disappear. I will write, I won't eat, I won't sleep. So I don't write every day because it will be an addiction for me. So I have to have, like, the book forced me to be like, you have to write about this, and it has to get done. And even with that, it's kind of like, it's kind of how I view with gardening. There are certain houses or certain places that I will garden in that the client has no budget. They don't care. They don't care what I do with their space. I can come whenever I want to. So I just go ham. I just do whatever I want to. And there are certain clients I have, they have a budget. I need to be there for an hour. I only have, so I have to, like, divide my time. Like, if you don't give me, like, Bri and Latoya really put me on, like, you have, not that you have to get this done, but it's like they're depending on me to be consistent and to not, that was one of the things that, I'll talk about this more when I do, like, an editor conversation, but one thing I will tell you, if you ever write a book, make sure you finish the manuscript before you send it to the editor and the illustrator, because I did not do that. And so I kept changing it. Even with writing, it's like I kept reading stuff and it's like, okay, I'm gonna add this, I'm gonna take this out, I'm gonna add this, because I'll just keep going off in different universes. So my writing process is, like, not professional. I don't recommend it for people unless you have like self-control. Like, so I haven't written after this, because it's like I'll write notes for myself, but just to be,
I think a lot of people that are creative can what's the word I'm trying to say? Sympathize with that. Because like you said, like, oh, you should write every day. There's some artists that think you should draw every day just to keep your ideas and your skills fresh. But like Amy said, like, she doesn't have self-control. Same way with me. Like, if I get into the zone of something, I won't eat for 12 hours. Or but this book has really forced me to be sort on a schedule, so that I can put out not only good work, but also, like, take care of myself and my mental health at the same time.
Let's see, what's the next? Okay, so not all the art looks the same in the book. So what I loved about what you did with the book was, to me, it looks like different artists illustrated the book and it's just shared. So, like, why did you do that?
I get that question a lot. Like, if you look at the book from cover to cover, they're like, you did all of this? And I'm like, yeah. I guess my thought process was sort of to compile, since Amy compiled information over time, that I wanted to compile the same sort of organized chaos or thoughts over time. And that's what you see in the book. That's why I decided to make it look sort of like a notebook paper. Some of the pages are typed. I just wanted it to feel less like a manual, like Amy was saying, and more like, oh, I don't have to garden or I don't have to have natural hair to buy or read this book. I can just enjoy it, listen to the music.
Okay, question.
Did any works of art other than literature inspire the way that you wrote the book?
I'm trying to think. I was looking at. I think that was another question I was looking at last night that I really had to think about. Oh, okay. So, other than literature, there's this movie that came out years ago, and it's called High Fidelity. It's about a guy who is literally living his life through a playlist. And I remember seeing that movie. I was supposed to see the movie when I saw the movie, but I saw the movie. But I just love the fact that literally, like, he pretty much timelined his life through music. It was like a mixtape for his life, and that just always stuck in my head. So that was like one of the main inspirations of just how I went, when I was still here trying to figure out, like, how do I make this book more personal, because I'm writing this memoir about me. Nobody knows who I am except for the people that know me. So how would I get people to be more interested in it besides illustrations? And I remember thinking about that movie and just the whole playlist, and just thinking about, like, again, being from New York, it's like mixtapes galore. Like, I grew up where you weren't really trying to spend money on albums and tapes. You live in a city where there's like 5 million radio stations, and you just pop a tape in the deck and you just wait for your song to come on and you just record it. And then you have your own mixtape. But then just thinking about, like, there's just certain songs, it's like, I have to capture this one, I have to capture this one. So it's like, that was my way of just, like, it's like putting my stamp on it, so when people look at it, they can just see, like, this is not, I've heard this is not normal in a bad way, but people are just looking at it, like, trying to figure out, like, what is this? Like, what did you just do? So, yeah, that, the High Fidelity, just making a playlist for your life, that was the main thing that inspired me.
That's funny, because you never told me that, but, like, I thought about that when I was reading the manuscript at first, yeah. I was like, oh, this is an interesting concept that I never really saw in writing, so.
Okay, so next question for you is, so being that I'm talking more about music, even though the book is about hair and gardening, out of your illustrations, you really didn't put a lot of illustrations featuring hair, or like a lot of things. So why?
I wanted to leave those things up to interpretation for the reader. I know sometimes I am a victim of comparison. Like, I would compare myself to a lot of stuff, so I didn't want somebody to necessarily take your book as law, or like, because the words, they're like, oh, this is just my experience, and so I didn't want to overcrowd that by thinking that this illustration of a garden is how their garden should look, because that's what you said. Like, I didn't want that to happen. So.
Yeah, I like that, because I remember when I first saw the illustrations, and she would email them to me, like every couple of weeks I get an email and she'd show me. And technically the original plan for the book was one illustration per chapter. Literally one art piece per chapter. As most of you who have the book know, that's not what the book looks like. Because every time she sent me an illustration, or several of them, I'm like, well, I'll be taking out a loan. Just keep cranking them out. I couldn't tell her. There was nothing that I told her not to put in there. Like, every time she sent me something, I was just like, yep. And I'm glad, like, it didn't faze me that you didn't do any hairstyles until I saw it. And I was glad, because, again, growing up, especially between the mid to late 90s to early 2000s, early internet, YouTube, there wasn't really as much natural hair videos and stuff out there that there is now. So if you had natural hair care books, it's like you literally did whatever you saw in them, and it's like I didn't want people, like you said, to see certain styles and I wanted everybody to relate too. So yeah, I'm glad that like it was a lot of Bri kind of knowing what was going on in my head. So there was a lot of unspoken communication to where we were just like, we would look at stuff and be like, yep, that works. Yep, nope, that doesn't work. And there was no really, I think the biggest thing was like the book cover.
Yeah. We can save that for later.
That
Conversation. Yeah. So I know the ways that I dealt with burnout and trying to keep it all together with this book, because our lives didn't stop. We still had to do everything else. So how did you deal with burnout on occasions in the whole like 2-year process?
I think what helped me is the fact that I am a gardener. So even though I do it for a living, I also do it because it's therapy for me. So if a week goes by and I'm not digging in dirt, I'm not right. So the majority, even though we started January, it didn't get heavy until summer. But then I was busy working in gardens, so like I literally could just go and be in a garden just to chill out. And I think you took a couple of vacations. Yeah.
Yeah. I was sick a lot these last 2 years.
Yeah, because I was like, I mean, yeah, I got COVID, you got COVID, the book got COVID.
I got COVID a bunch of times.
Yeah.
But the doctor still has my results as pending.
Yeah. The crazy thing about that was because of the sicknesses and vacations and just literally getting tired of looking at a computer screen, because that's what you're doing all the time. It made the book what it was, because every time, it was not that I liked getting sick, but whenever there was a pause between you sending me stuff, I went through the book, and literally there's at least probably 2 chapters that wouldn't exist if you didn't pause it, because I got to go through and really like figure out like, okay, I really don't want to say this. Like something was just bothering me about certain parts of the book that I was just like, I don't feel good about that, but I don't know what it is. And then when she's like, it's gonna be a while, I got to take time to rest and be like, okay, let me really look at this. And was like, okay, that's what I don't want. That's what I don't want. But if she would have been like on it, the book would have got out when I wanted it out, but it wouldn't be nowhere the way it is now. So I would be heavily disappointed if things would have went the way I wanted them to go instead of the way they wanted it to go. So.
Yeah, especially with my creative process, it's a bit, there's a few steps than just dumping color on a page. So I tried to like give her a little bit of not a schedule, but a look inside my sort of process, and like these things have to be done first before I can do these things. And for the sake of my mental health, I'm not going to do them until these things are done first, because then there can be a lot of back and forth, a lot of wasted time. So
yeah, that makes sense. Like when I was watching, because it's one thing, I think one of the reasons why I liked having this first event here at the garden, but it's the gallery that's and the garden's attached to it, is the artistic appeal of it. And like in terms of gardening, I'll have clients that just think, oh, all you gotta do is just put a plant in the ground. And it's like, no. I have to like look at it from the standpoint like you're gonna be watching this every day. This is your landscape. You're gonna be looking at this every day. When the weather's good, when the weather's bad, when you're not feeling good, when you're feeling good. It's an emotional thing. So I can't just stick a plant in the ground. I have to literally figure out what it's gonna look like. If you have kids and they're 3, and if this is your forever house, I gotta think about, are you gonna be having parties? Are you gonna be having weddings? Are you gonna be having graduations? Like, what is this gonna finally look like? So it's a process though. Like watching Bri go through her process, I'm like, okay, like I get it. Like, let me just kind of slow down, because in my mind I'm just like, honestly, it's like, oh, she can just draw. She can draw better in faction than me. Why can't she just, just canva it? I don't understand.
I have a love-hate relationship with Canva.
Yeah.
I have a question. So what you were saying is, how do you keep the creative process going in continuity with the structure? Do you find that, that creative issue?
I do find that sort of difficult. I think that this is the first project where I just had deadlines, had somebody else that was technically boss to my creativity, so that was a struggle. I had to, I got sick a few times, I took vacation, I had to use those opportunities to refuel my creative brain and creative process with other things, like my own projects, making stuff for my online store, so that the book didn't feel so rushed, like I gotta get this done because I don't have time to do anything else, and she wants this done at this time. And I think I persuaded Amy a lot of the times to be like, hey, like, if you want this book to be what you envision and what you imagine, it's gonna take time. So and I'm not gonna rush, because I want the book to represent me, myself, but also represent Amy, so that years to come down the line, she is still proud of the work she put out.
And I remember, like, it was a very nicely worded email, breaking it all down, and it made sense because she had already, by this time, you were like in the middle of the book. So to me, it was just like, okay, she's already shown me what she can do. Why am I going to rush that? And just, so let me just let her do her thing, and I'll just have to, like, that's when I really had to learn, just like with gardening, like, I'll get clients who just want instant gardening, and it's just like, if I'm planting bulbs now, we have to wait until April to see if they survive, if they're the color that we got, because sometimes the packages are wrong, if they got eaten up by squirrels, and if it actually, when it comes up, do you even want them there? So it's like I had to really start like, okay, this is like gardening, let me chill out, because if I rush it, I'm gonna kill it. So in my mind, I'm like, if I rush her, I'm gonna kill her creativity, and it's gonna look crazy, and then I'm gonna be upset, but it's gonna be my fault. So yeah.
I don't know if you mentioned this before, but this is both of your first time with the published book, and then my first time being an illustrator in such a large capacity. So everything, the whole process was new for both of us on both sides. I'm glad I am able to still be here.
I mean, like I said, that's the one thing I learned. It's like, I didn't really understand, like, I would be changing literal paragraphs. So as a writer, you just change a paragraph, you change a sentence. But she's literally creating stuff out of her brain to match what I'm writing. So when I give her the manuscript back, and she's like, so where'd the paragraph? I can see her in her mind, like, I literally spent like a whole week designing for the paragraph you just took out. Where'd it go? But she didn't say that because she was nice and pleasant. I tried to be. But yeah, it was interesting just like watching an artist actually create the art, because you go to galleries, you see the finished product, you never see the sketches, you never see the drafts, you never see, sometimes they're just not doing anything because they're thinking about it. And I kind of relate that to gardening too. Sometimes I'll be standing in my client's yard literally just looking at the plants, and people will be like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I'm literally observing the plants. I'm seeing who gets along with each other. I'm seeing what insects are eating things, why. I'm watching the reason why, like, certain plants, I'll have like the same set of plants, but these are doing better, these aren't. I have to sit and watch, and like, there's water flow, there's grading, there's all this little stuff that people don't think about. But most gardening is just, actually, I was looking at something when I was getting ready for this, and I wrote it down because I knew I'd forget it, and I'm glad I wrote it down. But there's two gardeners. I can't even call them gardeners. They're pretty much like the top, like, landscape design architects. Piet Oldou from Roy Diblick, and they're like plant stewards, where they're more artisans in the plant world than designers or horticulturalists, but they were talking about the art of gardening. And it was one guy watching the other guy, and he just said, that's what it is. A garden professional just assesses the garden. It's not putting weeds and keeping the weeds out and the competition down. Weeding is about 25 to 35% of gardening. The rest is assessing, looking, and understanding relationships, altering and changing the relationships to make the plantings more durable, more exciting, more inviting, and also more creative. That's the art of gardening. So it's literally, you're just observing nature and just tweaking things, but you're literally in a state of observation. And it's just like if you go to any art galleries or museums, you're literally in there just observing, and just letting whatever goes through your mind go through your mind. So that's another reason I kind of wanted the book to be illustrated, because now we live in a time of social media where people's attention spans are just non-existent. And so it's like something to grab your attention, but meaningful. Like I remember telling her several times, like, design it to where if I didn't even write anything, people would want to look at it if there were no words. And she did it. So yeah, I view it more as an art book that just happens to have information about gardening and hair, because if I go into a bookstore, I will always go straight to the art section, then the gardening, and then if there's a hair section maybe, and usually there's not. So yeah. I'm trying to think, do I have a question for you? I don't know. We got time. Or does anybody have any questions that we haven't brought out or talked about, or just y'all just want to be nosy? Y'all can. It's the only time y'all get to be nosy.
Do you guys plan to read any parts of the book?
I asked her about that. She shot me down very quickly.
I can. I was hoping people ask a lot of questions, so I got it.
I have more questions,
What?
but I still think that you should read a little bit.
Okay.
Hi. I'm Christina. I was just wondering about your book. Like, is it like an autobiography? Because I haven't bought it yet,
Okay.
and I know I will. But I'm just wondering, like, is it a storyline to it, or is it just like?
Yeah, so it starts off with me just being fascinated with a plant in my South Bronx apartment and a grasshopper named Henry. And then it morphs into my stages of my natural hair growth. So getting my hair chopped off as a little kid because people told my mom to put chemicals on it. then going into it, like it one to me, I feel like there's certain chapters that I get heavy into the hair part. I try to balance it out, but literally there is like a gradual procession of that. Then there's part of the book because again, I am a gardener and I'm just certain things I'm technical about, so the book does break up into seasons. So if you do want to get information about gardening, there's seasons in the book where there's chapters that's just named after seasons to tell you what to do during this particular season. So yeah, there is a timeline.
A little side note on the seasons. People with kinky curly hair have to pay attention to seasons too. You didn't know, now you know.
Ladies, I had a couple of comments and a question.
Okay.
So, first of all, illustrations, yes, gave life. I love the way, like she said, you couldn't really tell that it was the same illustrator throughout, but I felt like it gave seasons and stages to her life. So it all made sense. Control chaos, exactly. I love that it's the perfect coffee table book, people. So if you haven't gotten it, put it on your coffee table. People are attracted to it. Anytime someone came over, there's like, oh, Amy did this? I was like, yeah, she jammed on it, right? So that's where it's at. The other one was, what songs didn't make the cut?
There's one in particular I'm mad about because it came out right before I sent the book to get published, and I did not tell Bri or Latoya because they would kill me if I wanted to go in and change anything.
I did change the song last minute.
She really did.
I did change Lauren Hill.
You
It
did.
was,
Added a whole extra chapter.
It's
Yeah,
It was
yeah.
the superstar chapter was supposed to be Lost Ones, and then I got mad because I just listened to her whole album in one setting, and it was like I could have wrote the book just to her album. I literally could have wrote the book just to her album. So I had to that was a toggle. So it was supposed to be Lost Ones, but then there was PJ Morton, Stevie Wonder, and Nas came out with a song called "Be Like Water, Let It Flow." I was like, man, they just missed it. Like I missed, and I was tempted. I'm like, I haven't hit publish yet. I haven't, but then I'm like, we would have to redo the illustration. I already had Waterfalls TLC, and I'm just like, I can't do that to her. I can't. So that's going in the next book. that song is going in the next book just because I wanted it in this book.
I would have just told you no.
I know. Anybody? Dougie Fresh.
Along that line, what other projects are on the horizon for you guys?
This experience, and that's one thing I forgot to talk about. So most people will do, if you're an author, you'll do like book readings in different places. I wanted to have more of a book conversation. So the book, because there's so many genres, I want to have it set up at different, like a salon space, a music space, obviously a book space to talk, about the book. But the second book is literally going to be me going in more about being a gardener and dealing with the business of gardening from a homeowner point of view. Well, I should say more of a client point of view, because you don't have to own a home to have a garden. But then also a professional point of view, like what professionals do and don't do, and what homeowners or clients should and should not do. So some people may be getting their feelings hurt with the next one. But I already have it half written out because I already have the playlist for that done. This experience will go into the third book, which literally is about me writing, comparing gardening to actually creating and writing and publishing the book. So this will be in the third book. So, and Bri's just illustrating all of them because I don't have time to learn a new person.
Since the book is about you and your life, how did you choose what to include of your personal life and what to leave out?
That's the question I was trying to act like I didn't see. It was funny because it took one of my friends to like read the book and tell me that I had put stuff in there she was shocked that I put in there, and I didn't think nothing of it because in my mind, talking about hair and talking about gardens and talking about music it doesn't faze me. Like I can talk about those things, but because I was like making it personal, I was like revealing stuff that on a normal occasion I probably would never have done. So I don't think I really left anything out because like the biggest thing I was shocked that I put in, I think I may actually read that because I was proud that I actually wrote it in there. So if I can find it, I'll read it.
Take your time.
I'm trying to remember what. I should have marked
Anybody
it.
have a question for me when she?
Yeah.
Anything for the kids? Everybody loves the kids, right? Any illustrations you have?
What was your playlist? I mean, do you have a playlist when you're creating?
No. I have a wide variety of like taste in music, so sometimes I listen to like oldies like Etta James when I'm creating and stuff like that, because I can sing along to it. It's sort of not when I was creating this because I had to think a lot. This was like how to do this in silence. Yeah. I didn't want too much things crowding my brain, which is the opposite of what I do when usually I'm creating. I want to empty my brain. I mean, not empty my brain. I want to drown whatever is in my brain out. So, yeah. I don't really have a playlist. I usually just put Pandora on and let it choose for me.
I found it.
Okay, go ahead.
So this is in the chapter called I'm Coming Out, track 3, and it's like Bloom. So this is when I was just kind of like, yeah, just kind of starting to get used to like being okay with myself. So, and I'm glad I made the chapters not too long, so it's fast to read. But so 1998 or 99 was a late bloomer in the hair game and got the Halle Berry cut, aka my second big chop. My stylist at the time saw that my ends were over processed. I had not put a relaxer in my hair since the 80s, but years of constant heat damage from blow dryers and pressing combs took its toll. That is when I started to pay attention to my ends and how fast my hair grew. I started wearing cornrows, clip-on ponytails, wigs, and micro braids for a couple of years. I purchased books like Plaited Glory for colored girls who consider braids, locks, and twists, No Lie, The African American Woman's Guide to Natural Hair Care, and Wanakee Hair Care Guide. By this time, I'm living in Omaha, Nebraska, and there was not a lot of natural hair representation. Still, I was not comfortable just wearing my own hair. Even had a couple of ships, relation and friend, with individuals who never saw my hair in its true state because I felt that it would have a negative effect. It did have a negative effect on me. Now I think and wonder how silly it would be to invite people over to my garden only if my plants were in full bloom. I would rarely have guests. They would never fully appreciate the bloom if not seeing the sprouting before or the slow decline in dormancy after. They would never know what my garden really looks like. That is why I was doing that. That is what I was doing with my hair and myself. At the same time, I started paying attention to the plant life around my grandmother's home, where I was living. Things were not looking right. A puddle of irises and daylilies in random spots, the annual planting of marigolds that did not match the scale of the house, the harsh chopping down of an incorrigible climbing rose. Fast forward to September 2007. Been volunteering at the Botanical Garden for about 4 months, my free way of learning gardening and horticulture. Practicing at my grandmother's home, a lot of trial and error. Practicing on my hair, more trial and error. In my mind, while I was figuring out the professional world of gardening and creating a business, I had to deal with being asked when I was going to get my hair done or fixed, or how I always looked prettier with my hair straightened. I came to the realization that people bold enough to question my gardening practices or my hair choices in ways that minimize my skills, worth, and feelings were scared because they did not, and still some do not, have the courage to take risks. Fast forward again to 2011, 2012. Gaining more confidence and helping others maintain their plants, having a garden mentor train me on better gardening and business practice, and caring less about what others think about my untwisted afro. The more I gardened, the less I cared about what people thought of my hair. I realized the plants were giving me therapy. Plants do not care how they look. They live their lives in a way where they are admired even more because of the beauty they bring without exaggerated effort. And then I end the chapter saying, with this scripture, Luke 12:27. Consider how the lilies grow. They neither toil nor spin, but I tell you that not even Solomon in all of his glory was arrayed as one of these.
Was there anything in particular, you said it, you were writing it about yourself and your journey, but was there anything you learned about yourself that you weren't expecting as you were writing?
When I wanted to make it more personal and realized there was a lot of, I always had the experiences of like my hair and issues with it in my head, and I would have conversations with people, but to write it down and then to read it back, I'm like, okay. Like there's a part in the beginning of the book where I talked about my hair getting chopped off, and I've always like talked about that to people, but like realizing like when I was a little kid and I got all of my hair chopped off, I never got picked on, and I liked the way I looked with no hair, because I remembered I didn't have to worry about me and my mom fighting anymore every Saturday night to get ready for Sunday. I saw what my face looked like. It was like I realized that as a little kid, I was experiencing less drama with less hair, but I didn't know what that was as a little kid. I just knew my life seemed easier with me not having to have my hair styled a certain way. But then to write that down, like I had it always in my head, but when I write it down and saw it and I remembered what that feeling was like, I was just like, this is kind of crazy. Like I didn't expect to like go through that feeling. So yeah, it's just like sitting down and literally like looking through not just my gardening journal, but I think there was times that I actually had to look through my poetry, because I use that as journaling too. So I had to go back and start looking at my poetry, especially when I wrote stuff that was pertaining to how I was feeling about myself, because that was tied up into how I did my hair too.
A lot of PTSD.
I feel like earlier in the talk you were like, oh, I'm not a horticulturalist, and like in that passage you kind of talked about like your gardening. How do you like feel now as a gardener? Like, it's just like really cool to hear you talk about where you've gotten your knowledge, and also I really love the letter at the end from like your mentor. I would just be cool to hear more about that.
Now, anybody questions me about gardening, I'm not rude, but it's like my confidence is just like, no, you're not talking me crazy. Like I know what you're talking about. Especially like when I let my gardening mentor read it. And it was crazy because right after she read it like that year, it got to the point where she was calling me, asking me for advice on gardening. She would have clients and she's like, hey, I'm having an issue with a client. Do you know how to deal with this? Do you know how to, have you ever seen this? And I'm just like, wow, like I never could imagine, like I keep staying stuck at when I first started. Like there's a part of me that's like, I never feel like I will know more as much as her or other people. But then when you start really paying attention to like true gardeners and realizing like we're literally all mad scientists, like we are experts at making trial and error look good. Like that's just what we do. We just, okay, it died, so we'll just plant another one or figure something out. So like my confidence, like after reading this, I was just like, okay, I guess I know what I'm talking about because I wrote a book about it, I guess. But the one thing I like about being self-taught, I personally feel like if you really didn't go to school, not to say that if you went to school it's not important, it is, but I think if you don't have the opportunity to go to school but you're passionate about something, you almost do more study on it because you don't have that structure of school to tell you this is the class you're going to take, these are the books that you're going to read, and you stay stuck in that box of what they tell you what your curriculum is going to be. When you are self-taught, you create your own curriculum, so you may wind up reading more books and looking at more videos and going to more exhibitions and conferences than most people with degrees will do, because you're trying to learn everything because you don't know where you should stop and start. Then you get to like weed out, so to speak, what you really want to focus on. So there's times where I've talked to people who own landscape companies that I'm sitting up there having conversation with them and they're like, can we hire you? And I'm like, no. Nah, you can't afford me. So yeah. No, I think my question is yours. I don't know if you had anything more for me. I don't have any more. Thanks, man.
How does being a published writer now make you view other literature in the same genre? Because I know how it is now that I've illustrated and looked at books with a whole new eye.
I've learned to have an appreciation for the whole publishing process. It's not fun. It's not. The writing is fun, creating is fun, but like the behind the scenes stuff it's its own job, and that's why I understand why most authors will go to have publishing companies do stuff for them, because it takes a lot of work that you want to create. And then when I look at other books, it's just kind of like, I think every time I write something now, I just always want it to be different. Like everybody says that, but it's just like, I think because my niche is gardening, I've read enough gardening books to know exactly what not to do. So it's like, as long as I keep that stuck in my head, like, okay, I've talked to enough people, I will keep talking to people and write according to like how I feel like what I want to read and what I know people will be interested in, because there's just a lot that it's rare to find a gardening book that, if it's a manual, they talk a little bit about themselves. And the crazy thing is, most people who get gardening books are more fascinated with the person who wrote it, but the book itself is about, the plants or whatever. And when it comes to hair care books, I mean, I don't think I'm gonna write another hair care book, but it's the same thing. The first chapter is usually the memoir chapter, and then the rest of the book is about styles and techniques. And there's enough, like I put in the end of the book, there's so many gardening books and there's so many hair care books. This is different. So I want all my books to stay different. So I think if Reese keeps illustrating and I keep having playlists and staring off in the gardens, they'll stay different. So.
When I first received the physical copy of the book,
Oh man.
I know how I felt. How did you feel?
Man, I got it in the mail and I was just like, it was weird. It was just like, I had to look at it and be like, I did this. Like, this looks like a book I would go and buy at a store myself. Like, I love the quality of the paper, the ink. Like, that was, again, like I said earlier before, like, I view this book as an art book. And so if you've been in most stores and looked through art books, the quality of the paper is like exquisite. Like, there's people's art, so it has to be produced a certain way. So when I got this book and I'm like, oh my, even like the detail, I flipped out on Bri when I took it over to her apartment, because the way she designed it, when she said she put like this is what like the inside looks like, where it looks like a journal. But the way she designed it was that if you have a regular notebook, you always see like the blue of the notebook paper, and she did that on this book, and I was just like, girl, like you lost your mind with this book. Even like when we publishing it, like literally hitting the last button, so we had to get the book cover uploaded, and that was like, it was like a whole week of fighting with these people because they were looking at the illustrations and they were like, there's a problem. And I'm like, what is the problem? Because we would click it and then they would like approve it and they're like, okay, it's gone through. So we're clicking it and they're like, we still keep seeing an error. I'm like, what is, it looks good. So they weren't understanding the fact that she put like a whole vine wrapping around the book. So they were getting caught up on this little thing. And so I had to call one of the supervisors. I'm like, what's the problem? And they're like, we don't, there's an error, there's like this part. And I'm like, you need to open the book cover and look at the whole thing. So one of them did that and they're like, it's a vine. I'm like, yes, it's just a leaf. Like, I need, y'all not printing my book because of a leaf. Print my book. And so they were like, we're going through, because we literally, that was when we really had the deadline. Like, something was happening and I'm like, this has to be printed like yesterday. So it was just like, when I got it, the first book, the first proof was like a darker color. Actually, it wasn't this color, it was like a deeper purple. And we both were like, it needs to be lighter.
Yeah, I don't know why. Digitally, when I did the purple, it looked good, but at the physical copy, it wasn't.
But everything else inside was just like amazing.
I went into the outside to match
Yeah.
the inside. Speaking about the cover,
this is the part that I didn't want her to zone off on, because we had like an earlier conversation about this, and Isabel saw literally Bri go off into a whole special space because of this book cover. Like, it was,
I had to reminisce a little bit.
man, because it got to the point where we thought, just me being just new, it's like, okay, so you know, most people, she'll do all her designs and then she'll base the design, you know, after she's done, and that'll be the book cover. So she sends me like proofs, like samples of like her ideas for the book cover, and I'm just like, no.
Well, let's go back, because you wanted to start promoting it on social media.
Yeah,
and
that's
I
what it
wasn't
was.
done with the book
That's
yet.
what it was.
And
Yep.
I had to be like, hey.
So yeah, I rushed
The
her.
original idea was me being done with the inside for the outside gets done. And she was just like, but I need to promote on social media. Can I get a sample cover or whatever? And that was a process.
Yep.
And
That's when I
like
learned.
it was children's book.
Yeah, the first cover, yeah, it looked like a kid's book. And I still have it saved because I'm still kind of, I don't know if I want to do it. I'm going to do a kid's book, but it's like, it's a beautiful cover. So I feel obligated to create something for it. But I'm just like, I like the idea because you had the elements of it, but then, yeah, I think I was just needing to get it out there and I needed something. And that's when I learned, like, you can't rush artists, because when you do.
Well, the first idea that I pitched you was because it's a playlist that the book, since it's going to be square, it looked like a CD with the.
Yeah. And
that didn't translate.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tried it. That didn't translate. But I'm happy with the outcome of the cover now. We went through so many different tries. I didn't even know, I lost count.
And then it was like the end. So like you were done, I was done, like, and then I went through the illustrations, and that's when I realized like I wanted the book to look like my journal. And so when I would do stuff growing up in New York, if I had a poetry book or a journal book, I would always have somebody in my class tag it. And if you don't know what tagging is, it's literally like graffiti with a Sharpie. And I'm like, that's my cover. Like, if it's my journal, that's my journal cover. I need a tag. And she sent me the graphic
tagging.
Yeah, you did. yeah, you did. And I was just like, yep, this is it. This is it.
Well, at first when I tagged it, it just looked mediocre. Like it wasn't
What was
right.
the first?
It was exactly like that, but
because yeah, the
not-
second one you put this, you
not,
put the sticker, you put the tape.
oh yeah, I don't know. Well, I don't remember what was there before.
Yeah,
I had to think back. Yeah, that was a
it's
process.
yeah. The book cover was like, that was almost like the hardest. Kind of.
Yeah, that's why like when you asked me to be an illustrator, I was like, I did a lot of research on like the process of illustrating a book, and so they were like, usually the cover is the last addition to the final book, whether it's fiction, nonfiction, doesn't have any pictures, children's. You may have idea what the cover wants to look like, but after the book is done, you're like, that doesn't match.
Yeah.
Gotta change it. So when she wanted it in the middle of the book, I was just like, I mean, you were paying me, but
I learned my lesson. I learned it really good, but yeah, I understand. Like, and again, if you wouldn't have did this, if like this didn't come out until like literally.
no, that I was like, let me get out of my head for a second and just, because I use I'm typically not a digital art person. I am now. I wasn't when she first pitched me the book. So when I got the book, I was like, oh, okay, let me sort of combine all the elements of digital and traditional art. So that was new. I was learning as I went on, because I'm so used to it, my art process being so physical, that on a screen it was a little different. But and a lot of people ask me what programs I used to do it. It was a combination of Procreate, which is an Apple app, and then Adobe Illustrator, and then I laid out the book in Adobe InDesign, which I think I learned in the same year that I did the book. So yeah, a lot of self-taught things. I mean, I went to school as well, but like Amy said before, you don't really learn everything that you need to learn or want to learn in school. It's usually by experience and just curiosity.
Yep. Anything else? Any more questions? Nope. Oh.
No,
No.
don't call on her.
Well, I just wanted to like thank you all for coming out. I am like trying not to be frozen right now. I'm sorry that the sun went away. I was begging it to stay. But thank you again for like coming out and supporting. Tell your friends, get the book. That's our paycheck.
Can we buy the book?
Yes, you can. You can buy whatever you see today, tomorrow.
Oh, I thought I should mention though. Inside the book, there are illustrations, and then I sort of printed the illustrations as prints. Some of them, the ones that we put together. So those are available in a set of 6, as well as a book, and then some of my other like illustrative designs. So yeah, that's everything. Thank you guys for coming out.
Yep.